Greetings, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you, even over Zoom. And I hope one day to be able to come to Indonesia again. I've been there a few times and I've really enjoyed teaching. So I hope to be able to come again. But this year, because of COVID, we're having the talk over Zoom. So I always like to start talks with a little bit of meditation, just so we can calm our minds, and then to set our motivation. So sit up straight, lower your eyes, and come home to your breath. Just watching the flow of your breath as it goes in and out. Don't force your breath. If you get distracted, notice the distraction, but then bring your attention back home to the breath. Just watch the gentle flow of the breath. Let the mind calm down. So we'll do this for a couple of minutes. Then we'll generate our motivation, and then we'll have the Dhamma Talk. And then let's cultivate our motivation for being here together and sharing the Dharma together. And let's place our motivation, our intention, very firmly within the context of being of benefit to other living beings. And so by practicing the Buddha's path, by improving the state of our mind, purifying it, developing all the good qualities, may we attain the state of a Buddha so we can be of the best service, the best benefit to each and every living being. So with compassion for all living beings, take a moment and generate your motivation like that. And then open your eyes and come out of your meditation. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about who is responsible for my suffering. Yeah, it's a good topic, isn't it? Because we all experience suffering. We all experience things that we don't like, events that we don't approve of or that are harmful. And what brings these kind of situations about? So we usually have a tendency to want to find someone who is responsible for creating the suffering situation so we can blame that person. Okay? In our normal worldly way, this is what we always do, is we find somebody and we blame them. This happened because you did this and you did that, and all this pain and all this misery is because of you. Okay, and so you're a bad person and I'm a victim. Okay, but in Buddhism, we don't approach suffering like that. Okay, quite the opposite. In Buddhism, we say that our experiences are created or co-created with our mind. So even though we usually think that what we experience exists out there as some kind of objective situation, in actual fact, the situations that we find painful or pleasant do not exist as objective realities out there. Okay? How we experience things is very dependent on our karma. Okay? So karma means action. It's referring to actions of our body, speech, and mind. So how does karma create our experience? Well, maybe I should say, how does our mind create our experience? That might be a better way to put it. So one way is through creating karma. So, for example, if we have positive intentions, an intention, a motivation of kindness, if we are generous with other people, if we keep good ethical conduct, things like that with a good intention, then that leaves, for lack of a better word, like a memory trace or a seed on our consciousness. And then that seed at a later time will ripen into the situation that we experience. So our karma, our actions can ripen into what rebirth we take, what realm we're born into what situations we experience, into our habitual behavioral patterns, and even the kind of environment in which we're born into. So all of these things are affected by our karma, and our karma is created by our own mind. So virtuous actions lead to pleasant results. Non-virtuous actions lead to uncomfortable or painful results. So that's one way in which our mind creates our experience. The other way is through how we are actually thinking and feeling about the situation right now. So I always like to use the example here of, because we've all had this situation, of going into a place with a whole group of people and we don't know anybody. Yeah. And so before going into the room where there's a lot of people who we don't know, one person may say, oh, I'm really nervous. I don't know anybody there. All these people probably know each other. They're going to be talking together. I'm going to be left out. And I don't know if they're going to like me. And I don't know if I'm going to like them. Why am I even going? I may not even belong here with these kinds of people. Okay, so one person may think like that before going in the room. Another person may think, oh, here's a room full of people who I've never met before. This is going to be so interesting because I get to meet a lot of different people who have different life experiences, who are different from me, and I can learn so much by asking them questions, listening to what they talk about. So this is going to be a really fun evening. Okay, so before going in, you have two people. One person is very nervous and they have a very negative outlook. The other person is very cheerful and they're excited about meeting new people. So what do you think is going to be their experience when they go in? Yeah, the person who is nervous, who doubts themselves, they're going to feel very uncomfortable. The person who goes in and says, oh, this is going to be interesting, they're going to have a very good time. So both of those people are going into the same room, experiencing the same, this external situation is the same. But in terms of their internal experience, they're having two very different experiences. And what makes the difference in their experiences is how they are looking at the situation, what their motivation is. Okay, so this is where Buddhism is well, in both situations, the karmic one and this one, Buddhism is very helpful because in this situation, it tells us, think about your motivation before you go in. Don't be so worried about if you're going to fit in and if people like you. That's just a lot of spinning around our own self-centeredness. Instead, go in like the other person and think about, oh, there's so many interesting people, and how can I have good conversations with them? And you know what? There may even be some shy people in that room that I can go up and talk with because they might be a little bit nervous. Yeah. So if we change our motivation, it changes how we experience the situation. Okay. So when we look at that, who's responsible for us having a good time or a bad time when we enter a room full of people we don't know? Who's responsible? We are, aren't we? It's us, our interpretation, our intention, and that will create our experience of it. Yeah. So if we want to have a different experience, we need to change our mind. So that's very much what Buddhist practice is. It's not so much about changing the outside as it is about changing inside of us. Even the karmic way of looking at a situation, that also is going to depend on our motivation. Because if we, let's say in a previous life or earlier this life, we do something with a very selfish, nasty motivation. We want revenge on somebody who we're jealous of or somebody who hurt us. So we want to hurt them back. And show them that they can't treat us like that. So we have a very nasty motivation full of anger and vengefulness. So that's going to plant the seeds in our own mind to experience suffering in the future. Yeah. When we act in this life or in a previous life with a kind motivation, with generosity, ethical conduct, patience, fortitude, we want to benefit other people. We do good actions, that create happiness in the world. And that leaves those actions too, leave seeds on our mind stream that will ripen in terms of what we experience in our future lives and who we are. Okay? So the virtuous actions will lead to happy results. The non-virtuous actions will lead to suffering results. So again, too, when we think about karma and the long-term effect of our actions that karma brings, here too we see that what we experience is dependent on our own mind, our own state of mind, our own actions, our own motivation. Okay, so when we say, who is responsible for my suffering, it comes back to us. Now, somebody will say, but in a previous life, I wasn't the same person that I am now. So it's actually that if I experience suffering now, it's the fault of that person who I was in my previous life. And then they think like their previous life was a totally different person, Actually, whoever that person was in a previous life exists within the same continuum as we do. Okay, so that person, had a mind stream. They had a mind. They had a body. When they died, their body got cremated or buried or whatever happened to it, and their mind got reborn in a new life. So in the new life, they may have a different personality, and certainly they have a different body, so they're a different person, but they exist within the same mental continuum as the previous life. And so that's how the karmic seeds go from one lifetime to the next. Okay? So an analogy is if you think of a river, okay? So there's the river upstream, middle stream, the river downstream. Yeah, the river is quite different in every place it goes. Upstream, it's very thin. The water's probably very clean. Downstream, it's probably getting more polluted and dirty. Yeah. And at some point, maybe it's getting purified again. People are taking care of the river and purifying it, so it'll make it cleaner again. But we call the river by one name, and we say it's one river, but actually there's a lot of different things going on. That one river is not something fixed and solid. It's something changing every single moment. So in the same way, our mind stream, it's like it's mind stream like a river. Yeah, our mind is always changing. If, going back to the river example, you put a leaf in upstream, that leaf is going to flow downstream. Okay? In the same way, if we create actions in previous lives, the seeds of those actions, they come along with our mind stream into our next life. Okay? And so in one way, it's the same person. In another way, it's different, a different person. So in one way, the two lives, they're the same person because the mind stream, the continuum of the mind is the same. It's like one river. In another way, it's like different people because with the river upstream and middle stream and downstream are very different. Okay? So it's different people, but it's the same person in the sense of the same mind stream. Okay? So what this means is that if we experience situations that are unpleasant, or we experience suffering in our lives, to recognize that we were the ones who created the causes to experience those things. Okay. Yeah, the experience, the environment may be outside of us, but how we experience it is going to depend on the karma we created. Okay. So, our experience of suffering or happiness is going to depend on our own actions. So if we don't like what we're experiencing, then we have the power to change that by changing our mind, changing how we think, changing how we act. Okay. And so when we talk about the law of karma and its effects, this is something that is very open, and it gives us a lot of power to change our experience if we want to. Okay. Of course, we'll need to change our way of thinking. We'll need to change our behavior. Yeah. And that sometimes is difficult, but we have the ability to do it. Okay. So some people, particularly people who believe in theistic religions, like they believe there's a creator God. So in Hinduism, it would be Indra. In Christianity, it would be God. In Islam, they call it Allah. So they have the idea that there's an external being who created human beings and who is responsible for sending us to heaven or sending us to hell or giving us happiness, giving us pain. But Buddhism does not look at the world like that at all. We have a totally different worldview. Yeah. And in fact, many of the great Indian Buddhists, they spent many years and a lot of time refuting the existence of an external creator God, saying that it's impossible that the world and us sentient beings and all our experiences is created by a permanent God who is all powerful. Okay. Why is it impossible? Because if God is permanent, that means God doesn't change. But in order to create, then creation involves change. So you can't say that a permanent God creates the world. That's logically contradictory. Yeah. And then you also would have to ask, well, why would God or why would Ishvara create the world? Yeah. And then, when there's very difficult to answer that question. Some people say, well, God was lonely, so he created the world. But if God is a perfect being, then they shouldn't get lonely. Yeah. And then you ask, well, why did they create suffering in the world? And there's no good answer to that either. Because if you're all powerful, why would you create beings who suffer? That doesn't make any sense, especially if you're supposed to be compassionate. Yeah, why would you create suffering? For no reason. Okay? So Buddhism does not see the world as governed or created by or manipulated by some kind of external divine being. Yeah, because Buddhism says it's totally, when you expose that idea and analyze it according to reason, you can't, it doesn't make any sense. You can't prove it. Okay. But when we think, about our lives, we can see how things we do in the past influence what we experience later on. Yeah. And so this is the whole idea of cause and effect. Now, in Buddhism, we talk about many different systems of cause and effect. There's biological cause and effect, chemical cause and effect, physics, cause and effect, these kinds of things. But when we talk about karmic cause and effect, there we're talking about our own motivations and our actions of body, speech, and mind. Okay. And what it means is that our actions have an ethical dimension. So whether we act virtuous or non-virtuous is creating the cause for what we will experience, because our actions have an effect. They have an effect on other people right here and now, but our actions have an effect on us in our next rebirth or later on in this rebirth. So in Buddhism, what that means is when we do something, an action that harms other people right now, let's say I criticize people or I beat them or something like that, I cause harm to others right now, but I'm also harming myself by putting the seeds of negative karma on my own mind stream. So those seeds may not ripen now, they may not ripen until my next life. Yeah. But unless I purify them, they will ripen in terms of my experiencing suffering because they were harmful actions. On the other hand, let's say I acted with compassion and helped somebody out, then that I help somebody right now, they experience happiness right now. And I also plant in my own mind stream the seeds to experience happiness through doing a virtuous action. So in Buddhism, when we help others, we help ourselves. When we harm others, we harm ourselves. Yeah. So this is a very good reason not to be self-centered. Because when we're self-centered, we only think about ourselves and we may harm somebody else without realizing that we're creating the cause for our own suffering at the same time. Okay? So this outlook makes us more aware, more mindful, more conscientious of what we are saying and doing and thinking and feeling, because we know that we're creating the cause not only for what other people are experiencing now, but for our own self later on in our existence. Okay? So karma does not mean fate. It does not mean predetermination. sometimes we use the word karma in a kind of flippant way, like, oh, why did that happen? It's karma. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama says that when we say like that, oh, it's karma, what we're really saying is, I don't know. Why did this happen? It's karma. I don't know. Okay. So, yes, karma does affect our situation, but when we use it in a flippant way, we're not really thinking about what karma means. We're not really thinking about cause and effect. Other people think that karma means that once we do an action, now it is the result is predetermined, and we're fated to experience a certain thing. And again, that's not accurate. That's a wrong understanding of karma. Now, while it is true that we will never experience happiness from non-virtue, and we will never experience suffering from virtue, that part, is certain. But it's not like, I hit you, so in the next life you hit me, or this life you criticize me, so next life I get to criticize you. Yeah, it's not like that. It's, that's a very childish way of understanding karma. There's a lot of variables. Yeah, a lot of variables. And so that is why it's so important for us to be mindful and to fasten our mind to virtue, and then to use introspective awareness to make sure our mind is still focused on virtue. Yeah. So that we are aware, oh, my actions matter. What I'm doing is going to have an important result. So that's why at the beginning of the Dhamma Talk, after our breathing meditation, remember, we generated our motivation, and we said with compassion, we want to work for the benefit of all beings. And to do that, we want to become fully awakened Buddhas. So we generate that good motivation, even at our level. If it's still artificially manufactured, we may not completely feel it. But still, we're habituating ourselves with a good motivation. We're planting those seeds in our mind stream. And that's quite important. Yeah. So it's very good in our lives if, as much as possible, before we do any action, we pause and we generate our motivation. So there's a practice that I do myself every morning that I recommend to other people. Okay, so that's when you first get up in the morning, maybe your alarm clock rings. Yeah. Instead of going, oh God, I gotta get up, I want to go back to sleep. Yeah. Instead of having that be your first thought when you wake up, think, today, as much as possible, I will avoid harming anybody. Okay. Today, second thing, today, as much as possible, I will benefit others as much as I can. Okay. Then third point, today, I will continue to develop my bodhicitta motivation, my aspiration to attain full awakening for the benefit of all beings. I will continue to cultivate that motivation today. So if when you first wake up, you think about those 3 points, I'm not going to harm, I'm going to help people, I'm going to cultivate the altruistic intention, then that really influences how you go forward in the day. because you're already at the very beginning, waking up, generating a virtuous motivation, thinking about something virtuous. Okay. Then during the day, it's very helpful to generate that motivation again and again. So maybe before you eat, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack time, you stop and you offer food. You mentally offer food. There's prayers that will help us offer our food to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So that's getting us to pause before we eat. Instead of just going in, I'm in the lunch line, I got my food, stuff it down my throat, kind of like we're a vacuum cleaner going, Instead of eating like that, just stopping for a moment, generating our motivation, thinking that we transform the food into blissful wisdom nectar, we offer it to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, then that changes the action of eating, and it reminds us of our virtuous aspiration, okay? Or every time, people have smartphones now. So every time your smartphone either rings or vibrates, that acts as a clue to just stop and generate your motivation. Yeah. So your phone vibrates, instead of picking it up, hello, what do you want? Hello? Instead of being like that, to just, okay, my phone's vibrating, I'm going to pick it up. Compassion, kindness. I will treat the person on the other end of the line kindly. Then you look at your text message, or you answer the call. So all through the day, we use external things to bring us back to our motivation continually. And it's very, very helpful, because the more that we can have a compassionate and altruistic motivation, the more we're going to be creating positive karma. And the more we're going to have a happy mind. Because if we let our mind fall under the control of ignorance, anger, greed, jealousy, our mind's going to be very unhappy right now. And we're also going to be doing actions that harm others, and as a result will be harmful to ourselves. Okay? So this practice of coming back to our motivation again and again is a really, it's a wonderful practice. Yeah. People often say, I'm very busy. How do I practice the Dharma? This is one way to do it. Yeah. And it doesn't take a lot of time, but it's very wonderful. Then the question also comes, well, sometimes I don't have a good motivation, and I say mean things, or I don't tell the truth, or I cheat somebody in business, or I criticize somebody or falsely accuse them. I'm not a Buddha. I make mistakes. I do negative actions. So what do I do then? So here, the Buddha described a purification practice. It's called the Four Opponent Powers. So it's a very good way to purify our negative karma and keep it from ripening as suffering results. So the first of the four powers is to have a feeling of regret for whatever negative action we did. Okay. So instead of justifying, rationalizing our bad actions, concealing them, we just are honest with ourselves and we say, I regret having done that. I was angry and I just let my anger go out on somebody else, and I feel regret. Okay, so that's the first of the 4 opponent powers. Then second, whoever or whatever we offended by our negative action, we now want to create a virtuous intention towards them. So if we had done a negative action relating to the 3 jewels, to our spiritual mentor, to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, like maybe we stole, there were some tasty offerings on the altar and we stole them, or something like that. So to repair the negative karma we've created with the 3 jewels, then we take refuge in them. Okay, so refuge is a practice, where we turn to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha for spiritual guidance. And all the Buddhist traditions have this practice. If we harmed other living beings, then we generate a motivation of love and compassion and altruism towards them. Okay, so by generating a positive motivation towards whoever or whatever we harmed, then that's helping to purify the negative karma. So that's the second power. The first one was regret, then restoring the relationship by generating refuge or bodhicitta, refuge or compassion. Then the third one is to do some kind of virtuous action. So that might be offering service at a Buddhist temple, doing volunteer work at a temple or a monastery. What you're doing right now, the Buddhist channel, that's creating virtue. Okay, volunteering at an old folks' home, at an orphanage, at a hospital, doing some kind of active, compassionate action. Or it could be reciting the names of the Buddha, making offerings to the Buddha, doing prostrations to the Buddha. It can be some kind of spiritual practice too, printing Buddhist books for free distribution, anything like that can be the virtuous action, what we call the remedial action. So that's the third. And then the last of the 4 opponent powers is to make some kind of determination, some kind of resolve to not repeat the action again in the future. So at the beginning, we regretted it. Then we fixed our motivation. Then we did an action that compensated for the negativity. And now at the end, we're saying, I'm not going to do that negative action again. As much as possible, I'm going to try and avoid it. There are some actions that we can truthfully say, I will never do again, because we are so kind of feel so bad about it that we know we will never do it again. There are other actions like gossiping, or criticizing somebody, talking behind somebody's back. Those actions, maybe we can't say, I will never do it again. There, maybe we have to say, for the next 3 days, I will not do it. And then have very close mindfulness and introspective awareness to make sure we don't do it for those 3 days. Okay, but some kind of resolution to change, to become a better person. So with those 4 opponent powers, then that's how we purify our mistaken karma, our negativities. In terms of our virtuous karma, we want to make sure that we dedicate it, and that we dedicate it not just for our own happiness and not just for the happiness of this life, but that we dedicate it for the awakening, the enlightenment of each and every living being, for the long existence of the Buddha Dharma in our world, for our teachers to live long lives so that they can continue to teach us. So we make some kind of dedication practice at the end of the day or the end of, a virtuous action that we do. And then we have to be very careful not to destroy the seeds of virtuous karma. And what destroys the seeds of virtuous karma is anger and wrong views. So we have to be very careful, if we start to get angry, to check it and to use one of the antidotes the Buddha taught on how to calm our mind down so that we subdue the anger. And in terms of wrong views, to not let our mind, think about ridiculous philosophies that don't make any sense. Okay, so I think this is just a short talk introducing you something about karma. If you want to read more about karma, a book that His Holiness the Dalai Lama wrote that I helped him to write is called The Foundation of Buddhist Practice. And that book has several very good chapters about karma that explain all the ins and outs. So I would recommend that, The Foundation of Buddhist Practice. Okay. So now that we generated our good motivation at the beginning, now let's take a moment and rejoice at the virtuous actions that we did together. Our individual virtue that we created from listening and thinking about a Dharma talk. Feel happy about that. And also the virtue that we created as a group. We created some very good karma together as a group. So rejoice at what we did, what everybody here did. And then you can imagine all that merit, all that good karma as like a light in the center of your chest, and you radiate that out. The light of your virtue, of your merit. You radiate that out and you imagine that it touches all the different living beings and that it pacifies their mind. It helps to purify their mind of ignorance, anger, and attachment. And I'll chant a short dedication for us in English. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody.